Welcome to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavel Shakras, and in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Alesis Recital Pro, which is by far one of, if not the most highly requested instrument on the channel. The other day before, I think this instrument had come into the studio and I hadn't unboxed it yet, and I was like, how many people actually asked for this thing? So I went on my YouTube comments and I filtered them by the words Alesis Recital Pro, so anything containing those would show up. And there were easily 500 to 600 comments. It was insane. Some of them were people discussing it amongst themselves in the comment section of the videos, and many of them were requests, hey, can you review this instrument? Now, the reason I haven't reviewed it up until now, and I've been getting these requests for, I feel like 2 years, maybe a year or so, certainly since this thing came out. The reason I haven't reviewed it up until now is because I haven't really been impressed with Alesis products as a whole, especially their digital pianos, and I just didn't really feel like it would be worth my time to get it. However, I already have a couple of other digital pianos in this price bracket, and so I figured, well, I've got those now, so I'll get the Alesis and see how it stacks up. So if you're interested, I will make a comparison between the Alesis Recital Pro, the Innovis i88, and the Donner DEP20. And if enough people comment that I should do it, I will do that. So let me know if you're interested in seeing that video, because of course an instrument that's under $400 isn't going to be perfect in every regard. And so all three of these instruments have some things about them that are good and some things that aren't so good. And they all somewhat vary in slightly different ways. So I think it might be an interesting comparison, but it's going to take a lot of setup time. So if enough people ask me to do it, I will certainly do it. But if there isn't much interest, then perhaps I won't. So let me know in the comment section below if you're interested in seeing that video. But in today's video, we're just going to be talking about the Alesis Recital Pro. So one of the first things I always talk about in my videos is the build quality. What is the build quality of the Alesis Recital Pro like? And you might expect that for under $400 US, price varies a bit by the way, that it would be pretty garbage, and actually it's not. The build quality is, I'm actually quite happy with it. The top bit here is plastic. It's an all plastic construction, except for this little bit here on the music desk. Everything else here is plastic, so this top bit is plastic. Also, the speaker grills, I think, are metal. Those are metal too. But the top bit is plastic, but it's not a cheap feeling plastic. It doesn't have any like bow or flex to it like I might have thought. This front bit here is also plastic, and it does have some bendiness to it, but it's all right. And then the underside of it is nice and flat, which I know might seem weird, but a lot of these cheaper digital pianos, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen the underside of one of these things, they have all these weird divots and canyons and holes in the underside, I guess for weight saving? For some special stand, maybe? I don't know. But so many do it. The P125, the Donner DEP20, all these more affordable digital pianos have these really weird molded undersides. And this is just nice and flat and simple, and I like that. Does it matter? Not at all. But I like it. And the user interface here is actually pretty good. There's a few little small quirks and foibles that we'll talk about later on in the video. Nothing deal-breaking, but just some strange little things that I find odd. But the overall user interface is quite simple, and I'll show a close-up of this later. I know you can't see it super well, but for a brief overview, you've got your sound stuff over here, you've got your volume and your menu stuff over here, and you've got your screen in the middle. There you go. That's the user interface. It's really pretty simple. You only have 12 different sounds. You've got 6 categories, and 2 sounds in each category. And those are all your sounds. So I think that's kind of cool. I kind of like the idea of having less sounds in a cheap instrument rather than like, 250, 300 sounds and then having a bunch of just really terrible ones. Now, if I'm being honest, the ones in here are pretty much on par with other instruments in the price category. But I still kind of like that you don't have, 30 different variations of string pads. Like, how many string pads do you really need in an instrument like this? Just one will do, and that's how many you have in here. So I think that's kind of cool. One thing I've always thought about, and there's probably a reason no one's ever done it, but something I've always thought about would be to make a bare bones digital piano that is both as simple as it possibly can be, but yet as high quality. So you maybe only have one acoustic piano sound, but it's a dang good piano sound. You only have one reverb effect, but it's a dang good reverb effect. You get the point? So I think it might be interesting, and maybe there's reasons someone hasn't done this because no one wants it. But I think it might be really cool to have a really, really simple digital piano that has very few features, but the features it does have are impeccable and outstanding. That would be, if I were building a digital piano, that's what I'd try to do and see if people are interested in it. But I like the simplicity of the Alesis Recital Pro, even though the sounds are pretty on par for a $400 instrument. Something else I always talk about in my videos is what things does it come with? Well, first of all, your I/O on the back is actually pretty impressive. You actually have a proper left and right stereo output jack, which is pretty cool. You also have a headphone jack. It's back there as well. Not a fan of that. It'd be nicer if it was up here, but that costs a little bit extra. And there's a couple of other things back there too that are cool. But one thing it doesn't come with. First of all, let me label everything that comes in the box and tell me what you think is missing. You get the keyboard, obviously. You get the music stand. You get a owner's manual, and you also get another little booklet about warranty information. What's missing here? I'll give you a moment to think. It's the pedal. The damper pedal. So the Alesis Recital Pro does not come with a damper pedal, whereas other instruments in this price class, even the 88 fully weighted keys, they do come with a damper pedal. Is this a deal breaker? Probably not. Extra, third-party damper pedals are pretty easy to come across and to purchase, but it's a little inconvenient. I like it when they just come with a damper pedal out of the box. So what I'm using in today's video is the damper pedal that comes with my Crewmar 7. It's made by a company called Boston. You might actually be able to buy this exact pedal directly from them. I'm not sure. But this one has a polarity switch on it, which is why I chose it. I first tried to put in Kawai's F10H pedal, which is one of my favorite damper pedals, and it just didn't work. It was always on sustaining, and that has no polarity switch, so I couldn't fix that. So I'm using this. It worked great. So if you wanted to buy a Recital Pro, just know it doesn't actually come with a pedal, which for an instrument with Recital Pro in the name, you'd think it would come with a pedal, because if you're giving a professional recital, for a piano at least, you're going to be using the damper pedal. So anyways, also, the visual aesthetics, I think, of the instrument are actually quite nice as well. The Recital Pro logo is kind of big, and I think it would look better if it wasn't even there, perhaps. And then also the Alesis logo is a little large as well and kind of shouty. If those were toned down a bit, this would actually have a really professional look. As it does already, it definitely does not look bad. Now, that's about everything for the overview side of things is concerned. So I think now it's time to move the camera in closer and give you a closer view of the user interface and the keys as well, and show you what it's like to play and use the Alesis Recital Pro. So let's go ahead and do that, and hopefully you guys like it. Hey everyone, this is post-editing me interrupting the video really quick just to make a little announcement about this instrument. I've recorded this video 3 times over to try to get the best audio quality out of the Alesis Recital Pro as I can, because I want to be as fair and legit as I possibly can. However, I'm having some problems with the line outputs. It has direct line outputs, but I'm having some really weird problems where the volume just will suddenly get louder and it will clip my recordings off software and programs. Now, obviously, you're going to say just turn the gain down. Yes, that's obvious, but I've done that and stuff. But what happens is in the areas where it peaks, I'll run both my microphones for my voice and the instrument because I'm talking and playing. And so my microphones will not be clipping and the instrument will be. But here's the bigger thing. The microphones don't even show a large volume increase. Where the line signal is increasing dramatically and clipping, the microphones don't even show a dramatic volume increase, which I think is very strange. And so I just wanted to let you know that there is some clipping in this video. I did my best to make there be as little as possible, but here and there you'll hear a little bit of it. So just wanted to give a little disclaimer. I'm sorry about that, but I did the best with what I can. The Alesis Recital Pro really isn't all that professional, and I would highly regard to not use it for recording. Highly recommend to not use it for recording. All right, on with the video. So here is the Alesis Recital Pro in all of its glory, and you can see here that the user interface is in fact quite simple. Like I said earlier, you've got all of your sound stuff over here. This top row of buttons is your voice selection, and the bottom row of buttons is basically for effects. So these here these 3 are for effects. You've got modulation, chorus, and reverb, and you can actually put all of them on at the same time. You've also got lesson functionality, which splits the keyboard into 2 roughly equal halves. You can actually change where that split point is in the menu. You've got layer functionality, which basically allows you to layer one sound with another sound, and then you can also do the same thing with the splits. You can have one half of the keyboard be one sound and the other half be another different type of sound. So, what does the instrument sound like? Well, let me give you a brief test here of the acoustic piano sample, and we will take a look at that. Enjoy. This is a brief little test of some fragmented little bits and bobs of some pieces to give you a little bit of a test of the tonal range of the instrument. To be honest with you, the default piano sound is actually rather acceptable, and I actually do enjoy playing the default piano sound. It is one of the better sounds of this instrument, which I think is nice, and the tone of it is a little bit more mellow than you usually will hear on entry-level digital pianos. Usually they go for like a bright, thin sound, and this sound is thin. It doesn't have a lot of detail and meat to it, but it does actually have a bit of a warmth to it and a gentleness that others simply don't have. Now, there's a few things you can do to tweak the piano sound to make it a little bit better in the function menu, which you access by hitting this button. And sadly, you can't really see the screen because it's not that high quality of one. You can actually scroll over to resonance, and you can actually hold this button, which then allows you to alter the parameter of whatever you have selected. So now resonance is on. You can hear a subtle difference. The resonance likes to turn itself off. I wish I was making that up, but I'm not. I'll probably end up coming back to that later on in the video, and we'll see that it's off. If you turn the keyboard on and then, or turn it off and then back on again, I think it remembers resonance. Let me test that out right now. But earlier in the day, I was playing with it. I had resonance on, and then I went back in through the menu. I had never turned off the instrument. Resonance was, in fact, off. So let's see here. Resonance is, where is resonance? I went past it because the menu in this instrument is, there it is, resonance is off. So I turned off the instrument and it forgot to keep resonance on. So it does forget, it does turn it off when you turn off the instrument, and I think it also just turns off after a certain period of time. Like if you switch sounds or go into one of the effects, something in the instrument causes the resonance to turn off as well. So anyway, here's with resonance on. And I'll do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison here of with it on and with it off, and the difference is subtle, but you can hear it. Hopefully, if you're listening to that with decent speakers or headphones, you're able to hear some of the artificial sympathetic resonance this instrument has. It's definitely not the best sympathetic resonance, but the fact that you're able to toggle that on and off, although it forgets it after a while, I have it on, by the way, it's on right now. Even though it forgets it, or seems to after a while, it's nice that it's actually still in there. You also have reverb as well. You can customize this as well as the other two effects in the instrument. If I turn that on, you can hear that that definitely colors the sound. If the light is blue, the reverb's on, and if it's not lit, the reverb's off. So we're going to play a little bit of Clair de Lune again and just test out that. And I'll play another little piece as well and just toggle the reverb on and off and see what the difference is. So that's the sound of the reverb on the Recital Pro. Again, you can go in the settings and customize and change how long it sustains for, as well as just how prominent it is. So that is also pretty nice. It's not the best sounding reverb, but with the right sort of sound, it can actually enhance the sound to a small extent. So I think that's pretty cool. However, that's kind of where most of the positive things of the Recital Pro end, because it does have one big flaw. And some of you may have seen some of my other videos, and when I pull this out of my pocket, you may recognize what this is, and you may know what is in store. For those of you who do not know what this is a set of graduated gram weights. Professional piano technicians will use these exact same devices to regulate the actions on high-end concert grands like Steinways and Faziolis and such and so forth. So this is not the greatest test to use on this instrument, because these are made to test the action and to measure various up weights and down weights of a real acoustic piano's action. They don't work quite as intended with a digital piano, especially one like this whose action isn't doing that great of a job at replicating a real acoustic piano. On a higher end digital piano, it almost behaves as intended. With this, where it has no let off and is very springy, it doesn't work quite as intended. So on a real piano, what you'd use these for is to measure the weight of them. So to test the down weight of an acoustic piano, what you would do is you would set the weight gently on the key, just like so, and what you would expect to see when it was weighted correctly is that the key would gently depress very slowly, and then it would come to a stop near the bottom of the key bed. On a real acoustic piano, there's this little thing called the let-off, which is essentially a little mechanism in the action that provides a little bit of resistance when you push the key down very slowly on a real acoustic piano. That's why some digital pianos have a let-off replication. There's a little rubber nubbin on the inside that creates that same sort of bump. So with a real piano, you'd want to have this gently come to a stop at that let-off point. Since this has no let-off and isn't a real acoustic piano, it doesn't quite behave that way. However, I'm pulling these out because this is the best way I can really visually demonstrate this problem on camera. So, what is the problem? Some of you already know what's coming. The black keys are lighter than the white keys. I had never seen this before until my previous video about the Casio PXS 3000 and the 1000 and anything else they make that uses that same action. And before then, I had never seen a digital piano that had that flaw, where the black keys are all weighted slightly lighter than the white keys. However, here we have one, and it's a $400 digital instrument. And so that kind of goes to show why I was so upset with the problem with the Casio, is that back then, I think it's still several $100s. I think at the time it was about $900 for the PXS 3000. And so a $900 piano has a flaw that is also found in a much, much cheaper digital piano from a much less respected brand. Many people do appreciate Casio products and speak highly of them. Alesis, they're not really known for their digital pianos. I've never been a fan of Alesis products as a whole. So, that kind of goes to show how severe that problem was with the Casio. However, let's check it out on here. So, because it's not the greatest action, doesn't really behave as intended, I can't make it go down slowly. It just kind of swings down and just hovers in midair. But let's treat this as our normal, right? So our white keys act this way when you set the gram weight on them. As you can see, they all act the same way. They don't make a sound, they just kind of bobble there, and that's what they do. So if we set this gram weight on the black keys in the same fashion, look, it behaves differently. It swings down faster. This is the same way. I think it's about 54 grams. So you set the weight on the key just the same way as these ones. And on the white keys, you'll see it goes down a little slower, and it doesn't actually make the key sound. However, on the black key, as you can see, that one, it's a little more stiff, but still does it. Now you can also see that there's some variation here in these keys. This one is a little more stiff. It doesn't want to play as easily. This one plays very easily. This one doesn't want to. So there's also some inconsistencies within the keys themselves. And not only are the black keys and the white keys at two slightly different weights, but the black keys are actually inconsistent within themselves as well. So it's kind of like playing a piano with a slightly deregulated action that's not quite up to par. So that kind of goes to show here that we've got a bit of a problem with the Alesis Recital Pro. It's not actually quite as pronounced as a problem as the Casio PXS 3000 and all that was, but it definitely is there, and you can really feel that when you're playing. Now, what you're probably thinking to yourself, and you may even be typing this in the comments right now, is that only an experienced pianist would experience this. And you are correct that an experienced pianist would notice that, but an experienced pianist probably isn't the sort of person who's buying this instrument. This is an instrument geared more towards beginning pianists, adults wanting to get into the learning the piano, adults buying a piano for their kids. They might think about buying this. So would someone who's brand new to music notice this problem? And I think they would. Although it's even more subtle than the Casio's problem, if it was pointed out to them, they would certainly notice it, and even if it wasn't pointed out beforehand, they probably still would notice it. So, for example, if you remember in the beginning, I played a little bit of Eric Satie's Nocia No. 1, and that is a very simple piece, very musically not challenging, that a lot of beginning pianists play. Because it's beautiful. It's a wonderful piece, and I play it because it's also beautiful. But if you listen carefully to this F minor chord that I play, and I'll just play the left-hand bit, you'll notice that this A flat, the black key, will trigger slightly earlier than these other two, which are white keys, right? So basically, we're getting this kind of a sound. Of course, I'm exaggerating it there, but that's what we're getting. Now you can compensate for that and play these keys a little bit heavier and a little bit deeper into the keys so that they will sound at the same time as the A flat does. But you shouldn't need to have to do that. You should be able to play all the keys all at the same time and all at the same level, and they should all play at the same level. That's part of the allure of a digital piano, is you don't have to regulate it, and all the keys should be consistent, but that's not the case with the Alesis Recital Pro. So that, I think, is probably its biggest flaw. This problem also creates some issues when playing higher, level music as well. Usually I'm able to squeeze out Beethoven and Schubert and stuff out of these entry-level digital pianos, but not really with this one. I mean, yeah, technically I can play some Schubert on it for you, but it isn't really going to sound all that good. You'll notice that there's a lot of notes in here that just kind of boop, they just pop out, and they're much louder than they should be, and that's not me doing that. This keyboard has kind of a jumpy dynamic response that isn't noticeable when you play gentle stuff, even like Clair de Lune, it wasn't really noticeable, but when you start to play faster things, it really starts to become noticeable. So if you're looking to get into learning how to play classical music, this really isn't going to be that great of an instrument for you. Especially if you have some piano experience already, then it's really not going to be that great of an instrument, I think. Yeah, I don't think if someone purchased one of these, they would be very happy with it for long. It would be okay for a beginning child to learn the names of the notes and how to play some scales. But once they began to learn how to, play loud and soft and play expressively and, read dynamics and things like that, once they started getting into dynamics and expression, I don't know. They would probably realize, like, oh, you know what? I don't like this anymore. It's limiting me. I can't play very well on it. And I feel that I can't play very well on it. So, that's what it is. Let's play some Schubert, and you'll hopefully hear what I mean. And honestly, I just want to stop there because that sounded horrible, and I don't want to continue. Did you hear all of those notes that were just louder and just let me try that again. That kind of a thing is the sort of area where this instrument really just kind of falls apart and crumbles. Usually I'm able to squeeze out more advanced music like that out of these instruments, but in this case, unfortunately, I'm really not able. Having said that, though, the default acoustic piano sound is all right on this instrument, and we'll take a listen to some of the other sounds on this instrument, some of which are all right, but most of which really aren't that amazing. Check out the electric piano, it's meant to be a Fender Rhodes. Have a listen. Another note to make about the electric piano category is that the chorus effect doesn't actually have any effect on it. So if we go to the piano, the acoustic piano, and we hit the chorus effect and toggle it back and forth, you'll hear a difference. But with the electric piano, you really won't. And I'll just play one note here. You can also hear a strange little buzzing sort of a sound that I've noticed in other digital pianos too. They often have like a weird buzzing like overtone, undertone, some kind of thing going on, playing alongside the electric piano tone that kind of comes in after a little bit. This isn't as bad as on some, but it does have some strange little tonal quirks up here. So the chorus effect doesn't do anything with the electric piano, which is weird. The vibraphone sound is not the greatest either. You have a very, very short sustain that really isn't vibraphone-esque at all. Then we've got the organs, and something you'll also notice here is that I'm twiddling with the volume here all the time because I've already recorded this video once and then realized that the audio of the keyboard is all over the place. The organs are really, really loud. The pianos, the dynamics pop all over the place and go up and down, and it's just very difficult. And I wanted to get some more consistent audio here, so I'm redoing this a little bit, mostly because the organs are extremely loud. So I'm turning this down. If they're a little bit too quiet, I do apologize, but I think it's a little better if they're a little quiet than if they are clipping, but regardless, the organs aren't that amazing, and there's also some stuff I wanted to talk about with them too. So here's a little bit of the organs. The organs are in fact touch sensitive, by the way, which is kind of odd. Usually in digital pianos, some, like the organs, won't be touch sensitive and things like that, but these ones are. Which is a bit weird. You can go in there and change that in the settings, but it's a bit strange that they're touch sensitive by default. Look, you can't see it because this screen's terrible, but look, resonance is off. Resonance is now off. I think it may have something to do with the organ sounds. Just going to them turns off the resonance, but believe me, resonance is now off. So it just turns off by itself, which is really annoying. If we go through the menu here, we go to the organ section, there's a section called rotary speed, which is in a real organ, you've got a rotary spinning speaker, typically called a Leslie. There's other versions too, but the Leslie's the most famous. And so it's a rotary speaker that spins and basically, long story short, makes the organ sound cool. So this is intended to be a simulation of that. And you can kind of hear that tremolo-y, vibrato sort of sound going on at the organ. That, I assume, is a rotary speed. I mean, I know that's what it is, but I assume that's what they're talking about in this keyboard when they're talking about the rotary speed, because you can come in here and apparently, according to the owner's manual, change the rotary speed with the pedal when you have the rotary speed setting on pedal mode. However, that just literally just does not work. Every time I went like this, I was pushing the pedal down. So the pedal just sustains the organ. It's on pedal mode. The pedal mode just sustains the organ. If you come in here and even manually change the rotary speed from slow to fast, in the menu, nothing changes. So that's really cool. Up next, we have the church organ, which is, you know, it is what it is. You also have the harpsichord and the clavinet sounds over here as well, which are, you know, they're okay. The harpsichord sound actually reminds me of the Casio Tone 202 that I reviewed not quite some time ago, a little bit ago, but it was made quite some time ago. I think it was like 40 years old, 20 years old. It's old. It was an old little synth thing. And the sound in this reminds me of the harpsichord sound in that, which was completely synthesized. With Casio's interesting method of synthesis. So that's not really great that this sounds like a 40-year-old synthesizer. It was one of the first instruments Casio ever made. Here is the clavinet sound. Much like the Casio Tone 202, short sustain seems to be a common theme on this instrument. The vibraphone had short sustain, the harpsichord does, the clavinet does too, and the acoustic piano, although it doesn't have short sustain, you can actually audibly hear it looping. Take a listen. So that isn't exactly ideal either. Some of the better sounds, oddly enough, come in at the end of the list here. You've got the synth sound. And you also have the string sound, which is quite lovely as well. Three of the sounds in the instrument are pitched down an octave from everything else. That is the clavinet and both of the acoustic bass sounds. So I'll play these and then I'll also compare them against the piano to show that they're an octave pitched lower. Once again, very short sustain on the bass sounds there as well. Those are all of the 12 different sounds loaded into the Alesis Recital Pro. They're pretty par for the course for this price category. There's not a lot to say about them. Honestly, they kind of speak for themselves. I can't really say that any of them are phenomenal. I think the best one is probably the acoustic piano. The audible looping of the samples isn't, great, and the fact that the tone is very jumpy and is a little bit too easy to make notes jump out at you, because the action's not ideal. Also, speaking of the action, look at these sloppy keys. They've got so much. I should have mentioned this like 20 minutes ago. They've got so much slop in them that it's pretty crazy. They can also do the same thing that Donner DEP20 does, which I've also never seen before. When you do glissandos, the keys literally just slap together. So that's also perhaps not the greatest thing you'd want to see, but nonetheless, that is those are the tones of the instrument. I've already talked some about the effects here. You've got modulation, which applies a different effects to each of the voices. On the acoustic piano, it's a subtle tremolo. We've talked about the reverb. We've talked about the chorus. The other functions I haven't mentioned here are the lesson, the layer, and the split. So the lesson splits the keyboard into two roughly equal halves. It's for, students teaching, or teachers teaching students, I should say. So the idea is a teacher can play something down here. Here, the split point's not really perfectly done. It's somewhere down here, and this needs to be an octave lower, I think. Up here on the layer system, I actually really like how they did this. So typically with layering sounds on a digital piano, you just push two sound buttons together and it just automatically slaps them together. But on this here, the way it works is when layer is on, you can change whatever sound here that you want. And if you want to change the second sound, you hold the layer button down, and then you can come in and change whatever you want. So for example, right now we've got piano layered with strings. But if I wanted to do something weird, I could come in here and layer the electric piano with the, let's do the harpsichord. So that's pretty cool. It's a pretty intuitive way of changing the layer sounds, although every time you touch and hold the button, so for example, here, I already found another flaw with this thing. So in the layer setting, I know I just said I like the layer setting, but I just found a flaw with it too. So when you activate the layer setting, if you turn it on and you go, oh, hang on, I don't want my acoustic piano to be layered with my harpsichord or my vibraphone. I want it to be layered with my string pad again. When I let go of this button, layer doesn't turn off. What in the world? So that's weird. So if I make a change to the layer button, it stays on, but if I just tap and hold it to check and see what my second layer option is, it turns off. Okay, weird. And then the split functionality has the same basic idea. You have your main split sound and you tap and hold it to change what the bottom half is. So we've got piano and acoustic bass. So that's that. There's a whole lot of weird, quirky things in the menu that I'm really not a big fan of. For example, you can go in there and change the metronome speed by hitting the function button. The default value all the way to the left is tempo for the metronome. You'd also think that changing the metronome's time signature and also changing the metronome's volume would be right there next to the default metronome adjustment. However, they're not. To get to the metronome time signature, you have to scroll through tempo, touch, lesson octave, resonance, which is still off by the way, upper volume, lower volume, split volume, and here we have it, metro sig. That's how it's labeled. Time signature is labeled as metro sig. And so then you can go in there and change it. Every time this function button turns off, by the way, it blinks out. That means I've left the menu button because it turns itself off after a while, it just turned itself off, which is also very annoying as well. And then metronome volume is right next to metro sig. So at least that makes sense. But the menu in this instrument isn't really the greatest. There's a lot of things that seem to not have any function, like the tremolo button, the chorus effect with the electric piano, things like that. You do have also the metronome was the ugliest sounding metronome I've ever heard. It's just gross. I don't like it. You also have a record function, which I do kind of like. It's simple, it's basic, and if you're noodling around on the instrument and you come up with something cool, you can quickly and easily record. Now, I wonder, I made a recording earlier. Has it still remembered it? Yeah. It did. Okay, cool. So the record functionality is pretty simple. And finally, I think the last thing I want to talk about here is the demo functionality, which I don't ever really talk about, but I just thought I would in this instrument because it's kind of unusual to me. It sounds less like someone playing the instrument and more just like someone inputting notes into a MIDI track and then playing it through here. So if we switch, the one that has it the most for me is the third one, which is Chopin's Polonaise number 6 in A flat major. It's the most static recording of anything I've ever heard in my life, and it literally just sounds like someone inputted the note values, time, duration, and dynamics into a MIDI program and then just plopped it into here. That's literally what it sounds like to me. It doesn't sound like a person's actually playing. Does it really matter? No, but I just thought that was very interesting, and I've never really ran into that before. If you like that piece, it's a very famous one by Chopin. If you like that piece, you can go to my second channel, Milan Recording Studios. In a couple of days, I'll be posting a video of an actual human playing that on an actual piano, and it's a really, really great performance. It's one of my classmates from ETSU. He played during the recent Recital Hours program and played that piece beautifully. So if you want to hear that piece played on a real piano by a real person, go check out my second channel. It'll sound a lot better than that, let me tell you. But anyway, that's basically all the features of the Recital Pro that I really have to talk about. It's pretty par for the course, but as far as this price bracket is concerned, under $400. But I honestly think there's actually better options out there, which is why I'm kind of interested in doing that comparison. If all of you are interested too, you can let me know about that. So that's basically everything here about the Recital Pro. It's definitely not my favorite instrument in this price bracket. Hopefully you all enjoyed this review of the Alesis Recital Pro. It's been very interesting checking out this instrument that's been so heavily requested, but yet I've been ignoring and neglecting it all of these years. So it's been interesting to take a look at it. I think it kind of speaks for itself, honestly. It is pretty par for the course in the $400 price category. An instrument of this price category cannot be perfect. I don't think that that is possible. However, different instruments will have different features, and some things about some instruments will be better than the same things on other instruments, which is why I'm interested in doing that comparison of the Alesis versus the Donner versus the Innovis, all at once, all one video. 3 cheap digital pianos, all like stacked on top of each other or side by side, something. I'll figure it out. And so if you all are interested in seeing that video, you might want to go check that out. and subscribe to the channel, and also let me know, because I think will be very, very cool if enough people tell me to do it. Also, if you're interested, you can go check out my Patreon page as well, which allows me to create videos like this and purchase instruments like this. So for those of you who are interested in seeing reviews like this, and you might want to go subscribe to the Patreon page, but if you don't want to do that, you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, which also helps me out a ton. So thank you very much if you've done any of that, and if you do that, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.